songs, puppets, fun, and mime. Welcome to the story time. Hello, Augustins. You remember so many stories about Snow White, about Cinderella? Today we have a story about Red Riding Hood. Let's get started. Once upon a time, there was a sweet little girl who was loved by all who knew her. She was especially dear to her grandmother, who did everything she could for the child. Once she gave her a little red velvet cloak. It was so nice, and the little girl liked it so much that she would never wear anything else. And soon she became known as Red Riding Hood. One day, her mother said to her, "Come here, Red Riding Hood. Take this cake and bottle of juice to grandmother. She's weak and ill, and they will do her good. Go quickly before it gets hot. Don't loiter by the way or run, or you will fall and break the bottle. And then there will be no juice for grandma. And when you reach her house, don't forget to say, 'Good morning,' prettily to grandma, without staring about you." "I will do just as you tell me, Mommy," Red Riding Hood promised her mother. Her grandmother lived deep in the forest, a good half an hour from the village. When she got to the wood, Red Riding Hood met a wolf. But she did not know what a wicked animal he was. So she was not a bit afraid of him. "Good morning, Red Riding Hood," he said. "Good morning, Wolf." "What are you doing so early, Red Riding Hood?" "To grandmother's." "What have you in your basket?" "Cake and juice. We baked yesterday, so I'm taking a cake to grandma. She needs something to make her well." "Where does she live, Red Riding Hood?" "A good half an hour from this path. Her house stands under 3 big oak trees, near a hedge of nut trees which you must know." The wolf thought, "This tender little creature will be a plump morsel. She will be much nicer to eat than the old woman. I must be very cunning and snap them both up." He walked along with Red Riding Hood for a while, and then he said, "Pretty flowers, Red Riding Hood. Why don't you look about you?" "I don't believe you even hear the birds sing." Red Riding Hood raised her eyes, and when she saw the sunlight dancing through the trees and all the bright flowers, she thought, "I'm sure grandmother would be pleased if I took her a bunch of fresh flowers. It is still quite early. I shall have plenty of time to pick them." So she left the path and wandered off to pick the flowers. In the meantime, the wolf went straight off to the grandmother's cottage and knocked the door. "Who is there?" "Red Riding Hood, bringing you a cake and some juice. Open the door." "Lift the latch. I am too weak to get up." The wolf lifted the latch and the door sprang open. He went straight in and up to the bed without saying a word and ate up the poor old woman. Then he put on her nightdress and cap, got into bed and drew the curtains. Red Riding Hood picked flowers till she could carry no more, and then she remembered that she had promised her mother not to loiter on the way. She was astonished when she reached the house to find the door open, and when she entered the room, everything seemed so strange. She felt uneasy and frightened. "Good morning, Grandma," she cried, but she received no answer. Then she went up to the bed and drew the curtain back. There lay her grandmother, but she had her cap drawn down over her face, and she looked very odd. "Oh, Grandma, what big ears you have!" "The better to hear you with, my dear." "Grandma, what big eyes you have!" "The better to see you with, my granddaughter." "What big hands you have, Grandma!" "The better to catch hold of you with, my dear." "But, Grandma, what big teeth you have!" "The better to eat you with, my dear." Hardly had the wolf said this when he sprang out of bed and swallowed up poor little Red Riding Hood. When the wolf was quite full, he went back to bed and soon he was snoring loudly. A huntsman went past the house and thought, "How loudly the old lady is snoring. I must see if there is something wrong." He went into the house and up to the bed where he found the wolf fast asleep. "So I find you here, you old sinner. I have looked for you long enough." The hunter raised the gun to shoot when it occurred to him that perhaps the wolf had eaten up the old lady and that she might still be saved. So he took a knife and began cutting open the sleeping wolf. At the first cut, he saw a little red cloak. And after a few more slashes, the little girl jumped out and cried, "Oh, how frightened I was! It was so dark inside the wolf." And next came out the grandmother. Red Riding Hood brought some big stones with which they filled the wolf. He woke up and tried to dash away, but the stones dragged him back and he fell down dead. They were all happy now. The huntsman skinned the wolf and took its fur home. The grandmother ate the cake and drank the juice which Red Riding Hood had brought, and she soon felt quite strong. And Red Riding Hood said to herself, "As long as I live, I will never again wander off into the forest when my mother says no." All right, Augustians, so always listen to what elders tell you too. Ta-da, Augustians!